and for education. I'm really excited to learn today.
All right. And Destiny.
Hello, everyone. My name is Destiny. I, too, am a part of Heidi's advanced mediation course. I'm currently a senior this semester. And my goal today is really for us to just take advantage of this unique opportunity and hopefully come up with some great ideas to help us all communicate better in the future. And so now, after our little introductions, we would like just to go around and just have everyone kind of say, you know, what organization you're with, and then also your goal for today. I'll just kind of go with how I see on my screen. Frank, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Frank Tomlinson, Sandoval County Sheriff's Office. Been law enforcement about 27 years. I'd just like the opportunity to give you guys the opportunity to kind of delve into what law enforcement goes through on a daily, weekly, yearly basis, instead of what's always shown on TV or what maybe some people have experienced.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank. Kyle.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kyle Stapley. I'm a student athlete here at UNM, as well as a member of the really long name group of Audney brought up earlier, the Student Athlete Social Justice Action Committee, or it's a long name. But my goal for today is really just to hear a lot of different perspectives and talk with a lot of different people from across campus, and to really learn and just have an opportunity to connect as a community.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Kyle. And then Lieutenant, sorry, I'm going to mess up your last name as well. Larry.
Yeah, Larry's fine. My last name is actually Bitsoy. Just to give you a quick brief about myself, you know, I started my career in law enforcement back in 1986 with APD. I retired back in 2011 and basically took 1 month off, and next thing you know, I couldn't get away from law enforcement. So I was fortunate enough to join UNM PD and been here since, and I'm hoping to stay here a little longer. So my goal is, if anything, is to try to answer some questions. This was kind of a last minute thing for me. I'm in for the chief. Detective Young here is the one that's pretty much coordinated, and she's real good about doing all this. But a little quick background on my law enforcement experience. I mean, I've worked from working patrol to working horses to working specialized units in narcotics. And I guess my last stint just before retiring, I was in charge of APD's gang unit for over 7 years. So I dealt with a lot of young kids all the way up to adults that were gang members, and I had pretty good understanding where that came from and how that works. Other than that, I mean, feel free to ask questions, and I'll try to answer them. And if I can't answer them, I'll look something up, find something, or somehow find an answer for you. But feel free, if you look up on our website, you know, all the command staff were located on the website, and we're open. Our emails, our phone numbers, you're more than welcome to give us a call if you have any concerns or anything like that. And I guess that's what my goal is to develop a better communication and an understanding on all sides.
Perfect. Thanks so much for sharing. I'm glad that you're here. And then Avanti, if you can kind of give us a little introduction again, please.
Hi, my name is Avanti. I'm also a part of the women's soccer team. Hi, Delaney. I'm also president of the Social Justice Student Action Committee, and I think my goal here today is, sorry, my dog, is to just have like an open dialogue and be able to have good communication with everybody, and hopefully everyone feels comfortable and can feel heard and understood when they're speaking, and just to answer any questions that I can or help them keep the communication going.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Detective Young?
Hi, I'm Tish Young. I've been with UNM PD for 24 years. I didn't start at any other department prior to that, so all my experience is here at UNM, which gives me a little different perspective because I've seen all the changes that have occurred during that time. And my goal is to be able to answer any questions you have and to get the communication going, because things are always changing. And one of the things that we really need to keep up on is ways to communicate with our community.
Awesome. Yes, I agree. Thank you for sharing. Let's see, Brianna.
Hi everyone, I'm Brianna, but y'all can call me Bree. I'm president of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, as well as the Black Student Union on campus. And I guess one question I have for today is, how is law enforcement and UNM PD in specific ensuring that their officers are culturally confident in regards to the Black and Brown community? And I also hope for today that we can have an open dialogue.
Perfect. Thank you. And I definitely hope we can get that question addressed for you today, Brianna. And Holly.
Good morning. I'm Holly Anderson, and I'm here with the Albuquerque Police Department. I've primarily had most of my career in violent crimes. I've been with the department for 17 years. And I met Heidi through one of her previous students. And I've been a guest speaker for the last few years in some of the classes. So you may have seen me or met me in some of those classes. It's nice to see you guys again. I really enjoy the opportunity to be a part of Heidi's classes, because I think coming into the class, everybody has one notion of who is this officer or detective that's going to come in and talk to us. And then by the time we're done with class, it kind of seems to be very different. And all we had was, that 45 minutes of time to spend together, but I think a lot can be accomplished during that amount of time. Like Frank mentioned, I'm here to hopefully dispel some of the stuff that maybe you just get to see on TV, and be an open part of communication for law enforcement for you guys. And I think it's really important that we both understand where each person is coming from, and that helps us to have empathy with each other and kind of understand what's going on today, and just be that open line for the law enforcement and for my department.
Awesome. Yes, I've attended some of the classes where you visited, and it was a really good experience. So thank you for being here. And let's do Hannah.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm a member of the Panhellenic sorority, so that's my representation today. But I've also had a lot of experience with UNM PD as well as APD. My dad flew the police helicopter for many years for APD. Oh, my video stopped, sorry. So I think my goal for today is, I've had a pretty dire experience my freshman year and had some experience with UNM PD, so maybe just share my thoughts and stories, but I also really am excited to learn about other people's perspective, as well as, just safety here on campus and things like that. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I look forward to hearing some of those things too. Emma.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emma. I am a representative from the ASUNM student government. I'm also a member of the Panhellenic sorority. And yeah, I have a lot of other student involvement across campus, so hopefully I can be here to represent all of those as well, different student orgs and different jobs on campus as well. But yeah, I look forward to the conversation that we're going to have today.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma. And last but not least, Reagan.
Hi, my name is Reagan. I'm the vice president of the Black Student Union here at UNM. And I'm here, I just want to get an understanding of what are the current actions that the UNM Police Department is putting in place to improve the relations between students and the department. Also to hear what are ways in our own communities, outside of UNM, when we go home, what are ways to improve those relations with our local police also.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Megan. So it definitely sounds like, we're all here and excited to have the open dialogue and kind of be heard today. And so I do want to go ahead and hand it over to Chelsea to get us started.
Right. Well, Again, thank you guys for being here. We appreciate this. I appreciate this opportunity so much. So just a few reminders, the conversation will be held until 12. We want to stay within that time frame that we set, but if you need to leave early, that's fine. Just go ahead and head out. While anybody else is sharing, if you have something important to say, you can write it down if you would like, and we'll discuss it on your turn to share. But if you have any questions immediately, please use the chat. You can ask one of us or ask the host. That's perfectly fine. But if no one has any questions immediately, we'd like to go ahead and start with Frank. You were talking about like your daily life and stuff like that. If you would like to elaborate that for us, we're here with open ears.
Thank you. One of the things when I speak in Heidi's classes is to relate to people is cops, people in law enforcement, all aspects of law enforcement. I mean, we're human beings too. We have families. We deal with a lot of the same issues that people of color, sexuality, everything. One of the big things that always stands out for me is, and see if some of you can relate, cops have to be careful. I have to be careful where I go eat because I've had my food spit in. I've had razor blades put in sandwiches before. I've been in situations where someone has confronted me with my family, with my kids, in a violent way. This is stuff that we have to deal with on a daily basis outside of doing our actual job. You know, we do feel pain when we have to go to a situation with people who have lost their lives or have been abused, who have been victims of not only regular crime, but hate crimes and so forth. And, you know, the whole aspect of, you know, well, you're just a cop and if you don't like it, don't do the job. That's kind of unfair because a lot of the reasons we become cops is to protect everyone. And color, race, sexuality, handicap, everything. Most of us don't see that. You know, are there bad cops that are racist? Absolutely. Have I put them in jail? Absolutely. Any cop that's been in law enforcement long enough has had to arrest another cop or at the very least take him through an IA process, because that's what we do. We don't look at it as a color or thing. We look at it as good and bad, and we have no problem taking bad cops out of the workforce because they make all of us look bad. And it's not just a blanket, all cops are bad. That's like saying all UNM students are spoiled brats, which that's not true, but you can't use the term all. You have to go by what each individual person does and look at each individual's situation for that situation. I just hope that, you know, we all get a lot of questions from law enforcement because in the past and over 20 years, we've all been the secluded profession and people are scared to approach us or scared to ask the questions. We love to talk. We love to brag. We love the war stories. Go ahead, ask away. We're here for it.
Well, thank you so much, Frank, for sharing. It really sounds like you are concerned about a lot of things that we are concerned about, you know, daily safety with your family and color and race. That's fantastic. So Sergeant Anderson, would you like to elaborate a little bit and add to what Frank was saying?
Sure. One of the topics that I specifically investigate is officer-involved shootings. And I know that that's a very hot topic all the time, but I think it's really interesting to be able to understand it from the officer's perspective. We do often get pushed to us through the media and through different sources the videos that come out from those officer-involved shootings. And although the videos are very helpful, sometimes they're very hard to distinguish what exactly is going on in those videos. That often comes across, I think, to the public that maybe we're trying to justify the actions of the officers about what occurred in the video. What are you seeing through those videos? And we're not. We're actually using those videos for a tool, but you have to understand what video actually is and how it's actually helpful, and sometimes when it's not very helpful. Any of you guys have any experience with any video photography or anything like this? You can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's always a frame per second in a video. Every video is different. There's different lenses, there's different speeds, there's different angles, there's different types of equipment, and they all give a different vantage point, just like all of us. If all of us were standing in one room or in one location and a shooting occurs, we're all going to be paying attention to different aspects of it. You might just be paying attention to the aspect of your own safety. You might be looking at the person that's standing behind the situation. You may have heard it but not saw it, and you're standing right next to it. So everybody has a different perspective of what's happening of that situation. Video is often the same. Sometimes it will catch it, sometimes it won't, but sometimes it won't catch the portion that we need to actually see. And I have a video here on my computer. I'll see if I can share it with you guys in a little bit. I'll try to look for it. And it's very interesting to see the very same situation taken from different vantage points. So I think it's important not only for that topic, but for everything related to law enforcement and with what you guys are learning now, to look at it from all of the different perspectives and to be open to hear the different perspectives. When we investigate officer-involved shootings and when you see a lot of the stuff on TV and on the news, it might look like from the law enforcement side that we're trying to justify the actions of the officers and what happened that moment. And really, that's not our job. Our job is to find all of the facts of what happened. Why were we called to a certain situation? What was the interaction between the person who maybe got shot or shot at and the officers? What was the perspective of the officer who actually took that shot at that individual? So there's a lot of different situations that you're going to find to be interesting. I'll try to find something to share with you. That it's not everything is what it appears, right? There's always two sides to every story, and the truth is always somewhere in between, and maybe it's the third story from the third person. So we really do take a lot of time and effort to investigate these situations locally, because I know you guys are concerned with what's going on in our local community. We actually have a team of officers that is a multi-agency task force. And in the past, UNM Police was a part of this task force as well. But what it's comprised of right now for the Albuquerque Police Department is us, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, and the New Mexico State Police. And we've had different agencies enter in and exit. At one time we had UNM Police. We've also had Rio Rancho Police. It's all dependent on resources, if they can participate or if they want to. But what happens is when there is a shooting in Albuquerque, depending on what agency that shooting belongs to, we all come out and we all work it together. And we do that for the reason that we want to make sure that everyone can trust that you have multiple departments looking at this situation. And just like Frank had mentioned, we're not there to cover anything up for anybody, but we do like the optic of having other agencies be oversight for us in these situations, and we pair up with a different department. So if someone from the Albuquerque Police Department gets into a shooting, then we'll have someone from the county or from the state will be our secondary. So we work it together. So there's always a different agency walking alongside us as we investigate these incidents, so that there is the oversight, there's the, there's going to be the objective notion that there's another agency that's going to be willing to call somebody out to say, that doesn't sound right, that doesn't look right. And that's why we do this together. And the people that are selected, they have a lot of experience. The guys that are on my team worked with Lieutenant Bitzway for a number of years. They have about 35 to 37 years of law enforcement. I'm the youngest with 17 years of experience on that team. So we definitely try to pick the guys that have experience in all the different areas so that they can see it from the different perspectives. They've worked sex crimes and gangs and homicide, and a lot of them from David Gonzalez from SID. We have Michael Davis, who worked with school resource officers. Todd Babcock is there. He's also from SID and violent crimes. And we have a new guy that came from Rio Rancho. He's new to us, but he has 15 years of experience in crime scene and homicide, and that's a lot of my background as well. So we try to make sure that we look at these situations from every angle, and not just from the law enforcement perspective, but from the individual whom we're dealing with. Oftentimes those people can be in crisis. So we try to understand, you know, where they're coming from, what the situation is that we're responding to, and how sometimes that crisis bleeds over into the situation that now we're involved in when a shooting takes place. So we definitely look at it from all angles, and I would really like for you guys to know from us that we put forth every resource of the department to these incidents and to these investigations. So the team that I run, that's all that they investigate, are just the officer-involved shootings. We've had 10 so far this year, and amongst 4 detectives, so they get about 2 each, which is probably the lowest caseload that any law enforcement officer on this call has ever heard of. You know, you have upwards of caseloads of 40, 60, 70. These guys, we keep them to 2 to 3 max so that they can focus all the time and energy into those investigations so that we get the best product for the public. And then we submit every single case that we have to the district attorney's office. They get the final say on everything for charges. They look it over to make sure that we have that extra oversight. So not only us, a secondary department, and the district attorney's office. And if it needs to go, sometimes we have federal charges involved, so it'll go to the U.S. Attorney's Office, or we'll have the AG's office involved. So there's definitely a lot of eyes that go into these particular scenarios, and I know that they happen to be the most volatile, you know, within our community, especially lately, and they can cause a lot of hurt, because a lot of times there's life that is lost during these situations. So if you guys have any questions about any of that kind of stuff, I'd definitely be happy to answer that. And I think I wanted to point out that Hannah probably has a very specific perception of some of the things that we're talking about, being what we call a cops kid. I have a couple of kids, and you know, you get that other perspective of not only being a member of the community, but having law enforcement family and being a kid who really doesn't have any control of either of those situations. You know, you just kind of got to go along with the flow, and you kind of get to see some of the harder stuff that Frank got to mention. But I think Hannah will have a very good perspective on some of those types of situations.
Can I actually go next, or do you guys have like a plan? Sorry, because I can add on to that. I'm sorry, my bad.
No, you're fine, Hannah. We did have a little bit of a plan,
You're good.
but and then we did see some people that had their hands raised, but we definitely will get back to you. So thank you.
Yeah,
I
might have to leave a little early. That's why I was like, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Holly. It sounded, you know, like you guys are taking it sounds like you do a lot to, you know, kind of checks and balances, and, you know, like you kind of said, look at the situations from all lenses before coming to conclusions. So I think that's really great that you shared that. Thank you. I know that we did see Reagan. You had your hand up. Did you want to speak now?
Yes, I had like a statement and a question. So I would first agree with what Holly said about the perspective, because over like this year in particular, like we've seen on social media many videos, and it's like the same similar scenarios of a person, then the officer has the gun, the other person gets shot. And it's like, I think it's doing something to the mental mindset of the officers and the people, because I mean, we're all people, but like the person, the victim, the whoever suspect, if it was suspect or victim, I'm saying that to say that everybody's mindset is like shock right now, and we are seeing the same thing. So I feel like it's psychologically doing something to everyone. And why, and the question is, why is the gun the first thing that the officer grabs when they have a taser? I don't know if they have pepper spray. I don't really know all the different weapons that officers have on them. Why is that the first go-to, their gun? That's it. That's all I have.
Would you like for me to respond?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Chelsea, is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I know you're kind of the moderator here, so I'll let you.
We would love to hear from you, Holly.
Okay, great. Well, that's a very good question, Reagan, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because it is hard to decipher from those little, you know, clips of information that we get across the news. It looks like it gets very escalated very quickly, right? It looks like it goes from this individual is presented to law enforcement. There's maybe some kind of a quick confrontation that isn't very clear in the video, and then you see an officer pull out his gun and take shots. And that is hard to understand when you just see it in that very brief picture that they give us. So we do actually have options that we carry on our person, and every department is different and all the requirements are different. So I'll just speak for APD's options that we have. On our person, we are required to carry what's called less than lethal options. So we do have a taser. We do have like a pepper spray mace and like an expanded baton kind of a thing. So it's small, and then you open it up and it's a longer type of a swinging type of a weapon. All of those are options on the belt, and including our firearm, and sometimes the officers carry rifles depending on what the situation is. But those are all to be met in different types of situations. We only use lethal force to match that particular situation. And for an explanation, if someone is coming at you with fists, so they want to fight with you, that takes a certain level of response for us. So we use the least amount of force necessary to match the situation to be able to take control of that situation. So if someone is coming at you with fists, it would probably be unreasonable for someone at that point to take out a gun and shoot you. Would everybody agree about that? So if someone is coming at you with any type of a weapon, you have to make a very quick determination as to what that weapon is, how close are they to you, and how effective they can be with that on you or someone else standing next to them or someone standing next to you. So that's when those really quick split decisions come into play. Any type of a weapon that is taken upon an officer, we do have the ability to use lethal force at that point. It's very hard to determine who we are dealing with and their skill level. So you have to make really quick judgments based on what's in front of you as to probably the likelihood of what that person can do with that particular weapon that they have. We've gotten into lethal shootings with people holding a pipe, a shovel, knives, guns, and then we can get into some of those other situations that, Reagan, you've probably heard about, that they didn't have a gun. So they had a cell phone in their hand, or we had one shooting where we had somebody had a brake pad in their hand, but they presented it to the officer as though it was a weapon. So we have to, it's a very quick split second situation. Lighting has a factor, time of day has a factor, the distance in what they're doing, the way that they're holding the object and presenting it to the officers, all of that plays in the factor of deciding whether or not the actions of the officer are going to be reasonable. And that's where the perception really comes into play for the officers as well as the public. You may perceive that to be, excessive, but according to the officer felt in fear of their life because of the situation that was presented to them. And through their training experience and with the support of state statute, we can actually take lethal force in those situations. But again, that's why we have these big groups that investigate these shootings, to make sure that everything that was done and the information that is provided by the officer is all reasonable. We also take into consideration, all the witnesses that are around, any third-party video, anybody that has cell phone video. We take all of the statements that we possibly can from everybody that's in the area. And although the videos, use of force never looks good, ever. You're never going to look at a situation and watch it and think that that situation looked good, because it never does. Someone usually gets hurt on the other end. Sometimes it's the officers, sometimes it's the public, sometimes it's both. But to watch something unfold of that type of a situation, it's very hard to watch, no matter how reasonable it is for any party involved. It's because it's like watching a fight. Have you guys ever watched videos, I'm sure you have, on social media, of younger kids in middle school or high school and they're fighting? Somebody's recording it. It never looks good, and it doesn't matter the reason. Even like hard hits in football or hard hits in hockey, everybody's like, ugh, that looked bad. But it's all the perspective of who's watching it. Somebody that plays football or hockey, I'm going to be like, yeah, that was a good hit. It just depends on your background and who you are and how you're watching it and the way that you're looking at it. So to get back, maybe to circle around, Reagan, for your question, why does it look like we go straight to guns and that we have to do that? Sometimes it happens so fast that that is what happens. The threat of lethal force, or if the officer felt that their life was going to be in danger, somebody with them or someone else that's involved in this situation, we don't have the luxury of standing back all the time and taking a lot of time to evaluate that situation. That's why we get trained the way that we do, so that we can make those split-second decisions. Oftentimes, that is to save someone else's life. And those are the times in which we use lethal force. That's when we're trained to use lethal force. And that's when we're legally able to use lethal force, is to protect yourself or to protect someone else. In any other instance, it's against the law. And any of the law enforcement officers on here that I know will charge somebody with a crime if they did it outside of those realms.
Thank you for that, Holly. We really appreciate that. It sounds like APD has a lot of steps they take to make sure that they're following the guidelines to a T. I did see that Emma had her hand raised. If you'd like to go ahead and...
Hi, so is this the time to ask questions right now? I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Holly, you did mention that when you were previously discussing like Reagan's question, that these officers are often like fearing their lives. And so I just wanted to bring up the question that like oftentimes we, like right now, especially right now, like we are seeing instances where there are individuals, like people of color, specifically like in the George Floyd case, where they were not necessarily doing anything wrong. And so I'm wondering, like, when you are discussing like this idea of someone fearing for their life, like, are you taking like systemic steps and changes for them to not have those personal biases against individuals of color? And so like, what are those steps that APD and UNM PD are taking to address like personal biases, and how those are affecting like their work and like how they are acting in the field?
Okay.
Sure.
I can.
Sure, Trish, why don't you go ahead and take this one?
Okay.
Thank you, Detective Young. We'd love to hear from you.
Okay, so we've been doing a lot of talking with our community. We started up a community policing advisory committee. We're trying to be more involved in different areas on campus. The Division of Equity and Inclusion has a rapid response team to address racism and bias, and try to kind of focus on where it's starting, so that we can get out there and fix the problems before they become huge problems. So we're trying a lot of different things. The last, in our community policing committee last week, we talked, actually it was this week, we talked to the directors of all the ethnic centers, and we found, you know, and this is an ongoing kind of conversation, they don't feel that the police are interacting as much as they could be. Their community doesn't understand the police culture. The police don't understand their community. So we're problem solving to try to come up with ways where we can communicate better, get to know each other better, because everyone comes from a different place, has a different experience. And when they come here to UNM, we want to know their experiences and understand what they've gone through, and share what we do here on campus, so that they can come to us whenever they need us. We've got lots of resources on campus, and we like to share all our different resources. So, you know, we're taking this opportunity to try to get out there and problem solve with the ethnic centers to find out what's the best way that we can, you know, open up communication better. Because this is not, you know, UNM, we're a small department, and a lot of times we have a huge population at UNM, and our police department doesn't change. We have so many people, and so our resources in our department don't go up and down with our population. So we have to use our resources the best way possible and get things in place when, like at this time, when we don't have a huge population on campus. This is the best time to start planning for what we can do when our population comes back. Because, you know, because we do have such a diverse population, we can't leave out any area. We've got to make sure that we're involved in every group on campus. And that takes a lot of work. We've got to set up for that, and we've got to be intentional in the ways that we approach that.
Can I ask a follow-up question then?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. So I guess my question is more directed at like what specific trainings like your officers are having to go through in order like to be a cop, or how those trainings are implemented like throughout the time that they are a cop at UNM or APD, like that are specific to like racial biases, and like not just going out into the community, but also ensuring that they are taking proper trainings that are specific to the biases that they hold, and how to not like use those in like when they are in like a situation, or how to de-escalate a situation with like acknowledging those personal biases and like trying like not to act upon them.
Okay, so our officers have had implicit bias awareness training. But besides that, we have training that we go through. Biennial training is 40 hours every 2 years, and that training is specific to what is changing in our culture. And so we have like legal update, and we have different things that we talk about in that biennium training, so that we're always, you know, on top of what is changing. And so that is something that we do have training in that area. But we also have the basic training that every officer gets. We have crisis intervention training, which discusses, you know, the mental health aspects of the community. And so we really have a whole lot of training in different areas. And because we're a small police department, we deal with everything. The officer, from the first contact all the way to court, does everything themselves. So they have to have specialized training in every area. So everything that they are involved in, they have to do themselves. There's no giving it to a specialized unit. Okay. So we make sure that there's lots of training available for the officers, so that they are able to do that and to keep up. But especially, you know, at UNM, the officers are trained especially on the resources available in the community. And that is something that we're trying to get the ethnic centers to come out and discuss with the UNM PD, so that we, you know, like I said before, so we open up that communication better, and we have a better understanding back and forth what's going on in our community.
I think you muted yourself at the end, sorry.
Sorry, did that answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit better, thank you.
And we can always improve. We can always add trainings. So we're looking for our public to guide us in that, what they think we might need.
I had one question. What does your implicit bias training look like, and how many hours is it?
I think it was it's a 2-hour training, and they go through video and through textbook stuff, that what that means and how it relates in the field. So that's an ongoing training that we have. I don't know what else to say about that. It's something that we have for 2 hours every so often.
Let me add a little bit to that if I can.
Of course, thank you. I was just getting ready to ask you too, so you caught it. Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to training. I mean, all our officers here in New Mexico, I mean, we go in extensive training just to even become police officers. But even prior to that, we go, the screening process in itself is unbelievable. Just to even become an applicant. And even here at UNM, that's one of my jobs is I screen new officers here. And so that helps, to weed out those ones that we think might have some issues or problems when it comes to race, gender, religion, what have you. If we see that kind of problem, they're not going to be hired. That's the first step in stopping that. Second, I was born and raised here in New Mexico. And just a quick background on myself when it comes to me, because it is a touchy situation when it comes to race, bias, and what have you. I'm half Black and I'm half Native American, okay? I was raised by my mother, who's Native American, so I knew a lot about my Native American side. My Black side, my father just recently passed a few days after my birthday, which was last month. I finally got to meet that side of the family, which was great. And it really touched me to be able to meet that side of the family. Now, with that said, again, I was born and raised here. So the majority of the officers, when I first started the department, came from here. So you had a mixture of race in our department. We had, you name it. And the ones that I saw personally that might have some issues generally came from elsewhere, whether it be back east, back south, what have you, especially back east. It's just a little bit different. They didn't understand the melting pot that we have here. So that I could see that. Because when I first met a person that was from New York, that was unbelievable to me. I thought it was interesting just talking to that individual, that officer, and what they did back there and how they ran things and how the neighborhoods were and so forth. And then I met someone from California, same thing. How things were in California. So so we got a mixture. Now, when it comes to our hate and bias training, it's not only that we take it seriously, but it's also indoctrinated in our standard operating procedures. It's a violation. So if we caught any of our officers that displayed any of that type of bias type decision making, they're going to be investigated, and ultimately, if they'll be disciplined. It's in our standard operating procedure. It's what we have. That's what we go by. I hope that somewhat answers your questions. Again, we take it very seriously. And we, like everybody else, we watch the news. I personally don't like to, but I do watch the news. And when we see these situations involving officers, I remember the first time I experienced it, and it was back when Rodney King, that was back in the early 90s or late 80s. That was my first experience when I saw that video. And I knew that we were going to have problems. As soon as that happened in LA, it hit Albuquerque. And it was unbelievable. So when we see this, we take it personally. And those are the types of officers, and when they display that type of behavior, we will do what we can to get them out, at least here in this department. And I've seen that with other, the other department where I came from. It wasn't tolerated. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you so much, Lieutenant Larry. We appreciate your insight. You really elaborated on those training skills that you go through. And I know Hannah wanted to share previously, so let's get to her before she has to leave. And then Aveda, we'll get to you and your second question, your follow-up question.
Hi, so my name's Hannah. I have a few things that I kind of just wanted to share about my experience, especially with UNM PD. So yes, my dad is not a sworn officer, but he has flown for APD, I think for the last 10 to 15 years on and off. So he's a helicopter pilot. And so I grew up in the military as a military kid as well. So a lot of experience around the country. I'm not from New Mexico. My family's from the East Coast. And so coming out here was very different for me. So my freshman year of college, I was attending UNM here, and I was in my second semester of school. When I was working at the Jewish Community Center, I answered a bomb threat, and that caused a lot of issues, obviously. So I do have from that PTSD and things like that. During that time, a lot of support was needed from a lot of sources, but as well, I lived alone in Casas del Rio here on campus. I've never really felt safe on campus. I think a lot of people do. Being an open campus in a very dangerous part of Albuquerque is something that a lot of us feel, but I worked at very early mornings, and after the bomb threat, I called UNM PD every single morning at like 4 a.m. and an officer would come and escort me from the door to my car, and that was something that helped me out a lot. But again, too, sharing these positive stories that I have does not negate the negative interactions that people do have or these situations that have arisen that call for justice. I just wanted to preface that. Growing up a lot with my dad being very involved in law enforcement, I learned so much more than I think a lot of people see from that side of law enforcement. And being in these communities that embrace a lot of different diversities, I've seen a lot of the issues that they see as well. So for me, it was very hard these past few months to see so much struggle between both sides of these people deserve justice, and then on the other end of it, of innocent officers seeking backlash from those incidents, very different, really related. One of the hardest things too that I've seen a lot of is in other countries for protests, they have taken down helicopters with lasers. And my dad is also a medevac helicopter pilot, and he flies a lot here in the UNM area. And a lot during the protests, people were talking about shooting lasers up at helicopters. And you can't really tell the difference unless you're very well versed with what's flying over between a police helicopter and between a medevac helicopter. And they had a lot of issues these past few months. And I think a lot of people don't really know is that police helicopters don't have weapons on board, at least to my knowledge, that can harm someone down below. So if there is a sworn officer, they have their gun, but there's not like a, huge gun that they can shoot into crowds and things like that. Or police helicopters are really there to be the eye in the sky, as my dad likes to say. And as well, growing up in and around the UNM PD area, I have seen officers receive consequences for their actions. Being part of a Panhellenic sorority, we had an incident a few years ago where a knife was pulled on a sorority event that while we were outside, and the officer shrugged us off, and there was a lot of issues with the officer saying to us, oh, well, we don't think that happened. There was videos, there was evidence, and that officer did end up no longer being a part of UNM PD, to our knowledge. And being a student here on campus, UNM PD has a lot of times intervened for us in situations that are scary. We've come home and there are people sitting on our benches and just on private property and things like that. It's really hard to be a woman walking around campus. I think for me, it's just I've had very positive interactions, but again, I don't negate those negative ones. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, I have felt a lot safer on campus from the police, but I also have a very heavy background in knowing to what they're doing. And I think one of the biggest things that I feel could be something to help this community, to help UNM PD, is just education. One of the situations that was brought up during the protests here in New Mexico were that snipers were put on top of buildings throughout UNM's area. And again, so I know a lot about the backgrounds of them and why they're up there, and they're not there to shoot an individual protester. They're there that if shots come from a building up above, they can find out where it is, and if need be, stop it from harming people down below. Or they're there to shoot out the tires if a car decides to drive into a pack of protesters. I think that me knowing that makes me feel safer. But if you don't know that, you see those snipers on top of buildings and you only think he has a gun and they're going to hurt someone. And I think that just having that communication with students or having that education with students would make students feel a lot safer on campus and feel a lot better if they see those police presence. And just knowing, like, I'm a teacher, so I'm in the community with a lot of children, and I see a lot of, especially here in New Mexico, a lot of abuse, a lot of drug use, and a lot of children being in very, very dangerous situations. I myself grew up in half of my household not being the best, and had intervention from police many times, that without those interventions, I wouldn't be sitting here today. And so for me, I see those, but I also see a lot of what the community is struggling with these implicit biases. I mean, recently, a lot of us have heard that a UNM police officer posted a TikTok with negative speech towards a certain group of color. And of course, as a student, I thought that was not okay. So my question is that officer, did they receive the proper disciplinary actions that you talk about? And do they receive, I mean, in my opinion, that officer shouldn't be an officer. Knowing how my family is, knowing how my father is, and how he holds himself to a much higher standard, did UNM PD hold that officer to a standard? And again, before I finish, my positive interactions with police and my positive interactions with law enforcement and knowledge in no way negate the situations that still need to be addressed, and the situations of, you know, as Emma mentioned, situations of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, no way negate those situations and the justice that needs to be brought. But yeah, my question, I guess, is that did that officer get the disciplinary action that you talk about? Is there going to be more implicit bias trainings now instituted after that officer's incident? But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. We really appreciate all of that. It really gives us a different perspective to look at. Would one of our officers like to answer Hannah's question?
Which question?
She is.
I can repeat it if you'd like.
Please.
Of course. Go ahead, Hannah.
So recently, I can't remember the exact date, but in the past month or two, a UNM police officer posted a TikTok on TikTok with a quote from South Park show that was extremely racist, and it showed workers in his house, and then talked about, I don't want to say the quote exactly just because I don't feel comfortable, but talked about their race in regards to the people doing work in it looks like his house, but that TikTok was posted. And there were also TikToks of him being a UNM police officer as well. So my question was, did that officer receive that disciplinary action that you guys speak of? And is that situation going to bring more implicit bias and racial trainings to your department here on campus?
Okay, you know, I don't want to go too much into the actual investigation, but because it was investigated, and I know that officer, and I know his family, and believe it or not, he's not racist. I'll tell you that right now. He's 100% not racist. In fact, you're leaning towards that, you know, because it was a Hispanic individual. Well, he happens, his family, or his other side of his family, I want to say common law type marriage, is Hispanic. They're related, okay? Now, what he did get, as far as getting disciplined, he got disciplined, and it wasn't the hate and bias because there's no evidence of it, because he's not. What he got disciplined for was SOP violations for posting or, you know, without permission, wearing a uniform, things like that. So again, what happened was, in a nutshell, it was posted, but someone took pieces of everything and put it together and presented it that way, when in fact it wasn't like that, okay? So in other words, it was family members that actually did the last part of that type video, and then they put it together, and it was supposed to be an internal type thing between themselves. But just like anything and everything, you all know that once you post anything out there in this real world, you can't get it back, okay? So my question, or one of the things that I was I had a problem with was his decision making, which is just simply, why did you do that? You know, there is a standard operating procedure. There's rules and regulations. You can't post things like that because it will give out that perception. So I understood that, but then again, that's hidden. That's not out there. You know, no one really truly knows. When it's presented out there, it's made to make it look like this way. And then when you hear the full stories, well, then for some people, you know, it's not good enough. They don't want to believe it. But I can tell you this right now, 100%, that that officer is a very good officer. So no, he did receive the appropriate discipline. In fact, again, he really is an outstanding officer, and it had nothing to do with hate and bias. What he did was he violated our sections where posting anything in uniform to represent the department, the school, you can't do that, and that's what he violated.
Thank you.
Thank you both. That was really great education. I didn't know that there were such statutes in place. I know that Vednia had another question for you, Larry, to follow up with. So while we still got you here, let's have her ask her.
Hi, Larry. My question was if you could possibly elaborate on what the screening process looks like, because I think that without knowing that knowledge, to me, I feel like just in general with people in any interview, they can speak a lot on what they want you to know about them, but there is hidden truth behind every interview. So if you could go over that, I'd really appreciate it.
Well, just real quick, I mean, for us, the majority of our recruits or officers that are people that put into for the officer positions generally are laterals or those who had already retired. We just now recently sent a couple of applicants to the academy, but for the last few years, it's always been other officers that simply either retired or lateraled over. The screening process goes, obviously, we look through their applicants, they fill out these questionnaires, review them, and then if they make it at a certain level where we consider them after an interview, an extensive interview, then it will be sent down to background. So one of the detectives, including Detective Young, will do a complete background on these individuals, and then it's going back through years of their employment history and so forth, and then we'll look at that. From there, they'll get re-interviewed, and if the upper command staff felt or feels like the applicant is good enough to at least go on to the next level, then the next level will be like a psychological test process, a medical testing process. We don't do the lie detector type testing here anymore, or we don't. I know APD used to. That I had to go through it when I went through APD. But the psychological testing is a big one, and then it's the background, and that's where we usually find issues, if anything. And if we do, they're not going to be hired. I'm not going to say that it's 100% perfect, because it's not. But we do rely a lot on when it comes to the I guess the vetting process when it comes down to getting them interviewed by the psychologists and how they answer our questions and things like that. But a lot of it has to do with their past history. It's a little harder when you're doing new recruits, you know, because it's a little easier when you're hiring officers, because you could get a lot of information when it comes to officers.
Can I add a little to that? Okay, so I do some backgrounds, and what I find is that from what the applicant gives us, the names of their supervisors or someone they worked with, the names of people that, of course, are going to say good things about them. We also ask those people, is there anyone else we should talk to? Especially the supervisors, who did they work closely?
Sorry, Detective Young, it does look like you accidentally muted yourself.
I'm sorry. So we do go beyond what the applicant gives us, but even that, like Larry was saying, at the end of the process, the hiring process, they go through the psychological. And I talked with one of the lead psychiatrists in the state, and he said that 20% of the people that go through the psychological testing get wiped out there. So it's a very long process. We go through a lot of different phases, and they still get weeded out at that very last process with the psychological testing.
Thank you, Detective Young. Holly, if you would like to add to that, you know the APD hiring process, if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I actually worked in backgrounds for a little while, and some of the things are similar. So when they talk about the background, some of the things that goes into that is we look at every city. You have a questionnaire that you have to answer, and you're supposed to list every job you've ever had, every city you've ever lived in, references, secondary references, and we call all of those people. We also look to every city that you've ever lived in to see if you've had any police reports written, to see what kind of a background you might have in another jurisdiction. We look up any court proceedings that you may have. We look at your credit report. You do have to have a clean credit report. That goes to show just responsibility overall, how you manage your money. There's a lot of different positions within the department, especially when you are dealing with individuals who might have a lot of cash on hand. If you're seizing vehicles or going into homes and doing search warrants, if there's money around, we want to make sure that you aren't personally having any money issues that would, kind of get you in the mindset that maybe you should or could take any of that. So we don't want that ever to be any kind of an enticing thing. So credit is important for those reasons, to make sure you're in good credit health. The psychological exam is always done. We do have the polygraph still. We also have physical requirements that you have to meet for the state to be able to get into the academy and to exit the academy. So, and like Trish had mentioned, we don't just take your word for it that, you give us your mom's neighbor who has loved you all of your life, and we know that they probably have, but we also ask them for, do you know anybody else that would know this person? So we try to look 2 and 3 people down the road to see what they might say about you. Anywhere you've ever lived, so we'll talk to your landlords to see what kind of a tenant you were. Maybe if they had a bunch of loud party complaints or issues, or maybe damages to the property. We take all of that into consideration. Once the background is compiled with all that information, then it's sent to a chief's oral board selection. So the chief himself or his designees, there's usually about 3 or 4 on the board. You'll go before them and they'll ask you questions about yourself personally. They'll ask about your background information. We also take into consideration your transcripts. So any grades that you've had, all the way, we get high school transcripts, we get college transcripts. We want to see what kind of a student you are, to see, if you complete things that you start. The academy itself is an expensive process for the department to put on. So we want to make sure that we get good quality applicants that are willing to complete the entire process. It's not easy. It's a lot of mixture of physical demand. There's a lot of homework that they give you, a lot of regurgitation. You really have to study the early mornings, and it's a full day at school. So, but it's really beneficial, because really you're getting hired to be what we used to say, educated and exercised, for a good solid 6 months, and you come out, more educated. Your eyes are open to a lot of stuff. I know I was in great physical, health at that point. It's kind of, you're made to do all of those things, maybe things that you wouldn't have pushed yourself to do. It's very fulfilling, because you get to see a lot of stuff that maybe you didn't think that you could do. I wasn't one of those people that all my life I knew that I wanted to be a police officer. It just kind of happened for me, and it was the right time and the right place and the right thing for my son and I at the time. And when I was in what they call the lean and rest, and you're in a push-up position, I remember often thinking to myself, why am I doing this? But in the long run, when they get to pin your badge on you and you get sworn in, it's a really good feeling. It's a really fulfilling career. And although there's a lot of ups and downs of it, I would never choose to do anything else. And Frank had mentioned, you know, some people say, well, you chose to do this job. You're right. We did choose to do this job, and we chose to do it for a lot of different reasons and a lot of similar reasons. And all of that process is worth it. Going through the background and doing the right things to get in. And we don't just pick perfect people to be officers. We want people with life experience. We want them to have done something, to have seen something, to have been somewhere. You know, we look for those people as well. And then we take, you know, some of the brand new graduate students. We want a good, healthy mixture of life. I remember I had a girl in my class who was, we had the most females graduate my class still to this day. We had 13 girls in my class, and it really made that locker room small. But we were from all ages. I was 20, I had just turned 23 the week I started, all the way up to, we had a lady who was 42. She started at the age of 42 in our academy class. And I just think of it now that I'm that age, like there's no way I would go through an academy class at the age of 42. So you have this whole variety of ages and life experience and all of these different, you know, it's a big melting pot when you go into the academy. It's not just a bunch of 21-year-old kids that we're, you know, handing guns to and telling them to go out. We want the variety of life, and that's what we look for when we put our academies together. And I know that Lieutenant Bitsoy said, you know, they fortunately get a lot of the officers that are retiring that they're just not done. They're not done with law enforcement, but they're ready to do a different chapter. So we're glad that we have those outlets to be able to go into these other departments and take all of your experience. And by the time you're in the ending years of your career, that's something that you're looking for. And I'm glad that we have the other departments out there that are willing to take some of us older folks that aren't done yet, that want to continue our careers so that we can keep the variety of life in law enforcement in New Mexico. I think in New Mexico specifically, we have a very diverse group of people who are willing to be police officers. And I think that really works to our benefit because you get a lot of different backgrounds and vantage points that are brought into our communities. Any questions about any particular step in the process? I know I kind of went through them, but it's pretty extensive just to get to the academy, and then it's quite a bit more to get through it.
I had kind of two questions. I think anybody can answer these in law enforcement. I'm super curious about the psych exam and where exactly you look for the biases. And my second question is, you guys said earlier that they receive 2 hours of implicit bias training. Do you guys think that's really making a difference?
The psychological exam, they do ask a lot of different, if you've ever taken one, you do a written portion and you answer a lot of written questions, and then you go and you see a psychiatrist, and then they integrate your tendencies that they discover from your written exam into the interview. And then they get more in depth of who you are, what your family history is, what your personal history is, what kind of maybe tendencies you might have if your tendencies are to be more timid or more aggressive or more assertive. Sometimes, you know, I don't know exactly how they do their job, that's their job, but they are, you know, really, really good at it. And sometimes you can get through that psychological exam and you may go on to the department and have issues. Those do show themselves eventually, and we do have to get rid of officers oftentimes for some of the poor choices that they make. And anybody in the department, and I know all these officers here will agree that we don't need officers who bring a poor light to the department. We don't want them as much as you don't want them. If they're going to be making poor decisions and illegal decisions or things that put people's lives in danger, we don't want them as much as you don't want them. And they do go through a process, because there is a process, just like there is to get hired, there's one to get fired. We do give everybody due process to that so that it's all done the right way. But the psychological exam, it's very important, it's very useful. Our implicit bias training, I think it's different for every department and it's spread out differently. Like Trish had mentioned, they have 2 hours every so often. It depends on the training schedules for the departments. We had 2 days worth of implicit bias training, so it was 16 hours recently, but I don't know how often we'll have that. So sometimes you get it all in a big group and sometimes they spread it out over time. It just depends on the department and the availability of officers to be in training, because you have to have people out working. You can't have everybody in training all at one time, or else you wouldn't have people available to respond. So I think it just depends on the agency's numbers and how they're able to fit the training into their schedule.
Thank you, Holly. I hope that helped answer some of your questions. Bree, I noticed that Frank wanted to add to that. And to introduce a new member that popped in. So Frank, you go ahead and share.
Okay. I hope I think forums like this, we just need to cut through the BS and just be honest, because we can sit up here and talk about, you know, what we're doing and all this stuff, but, you know, I'm just about being real. As far as, you know, my opinion after 27 years in psychological testing and that kind of stuff, to me, it's a gauge. If you're not smart enough to lie on the honesty exam, then you don't need to be a cop. I think where we get into more of the background is, you know, we go through social media. That's my first place. I hit your Facebook, I hit your Instagram, I even get into your Snapchats. That's where you're going to find out what really is behind someone. I talk to the friends, I talk to the friends of friends, I talk to anybody who may have known them, and I'm actually one that will look, especially for lateral officers, I'll look at victims or suspects that they've arrested. I will call them and say, hey, you got arrested by this officer. How did he treat you? Most of the time I get hung up on, but I do get the occasional ones, you know, that will say, hey, you know, I got arrested, but he was respectful. He was this, he was that. That's the kind of officer that I want to hire. And that, doing a thorough background check to me is the most important aspect of the departments now and what they can do to correct a lot of problems coming up. As far as bias training with us in our department, if you want to call it bias training, okay. I teach all my officers that I don't care who the person is we're dealing with. We treat them with respect. We treat them as human beings, and we do our job. I've been thanked many times for taking someone to jail or writing a ticket of all races and colors, because I treat them all the same. You know, there's no one better or worse. They go to jail. If they need to go to jail, they get a ticket if they need a ticket. And if it's my mistake, in the old days, and the lieutenant can help me out with this, in the old days in the academy, we were taught, you're a cop, you never say you're sorry. You're always in charge and you're always right. Back 20 years ago, that was a survival technique that we had to have to keep from getting killed on the street. Nowadays, we don't need that as much. And it is okay for cops to be human and to say, hey, you know, I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry I have to do this. I'm sorry I made a mistake. How do we fix this? And just doing that to whomever we deal with and treating them with that level of respect, everybody, not just people, you know, a race or whatever. Everyone should be treated with that same respect. Just like, in my opinion, cops who give that respect should be treated with respect also. People just need to start realizing that we're out here to do a job. We're out here for the good of not only the good guys, but the bad guys also. And, you know, things happen. I'm sorry about that. But let's look at every situation as a situation. Sandoval County, we respond to probably 10,000 calls for service a year. That's one department. APD is well over 100,000 per year that cops are dispatched to perform whatever duty they need to perform. And that's just two. Multiply that by every agency in every city, and then take that and put a percentage on it with how many negative encounters that we have. And percentage-wise, I think we're doing okay. I think we're doing better than medical malpractice. My part-time job is I also work for UNM as a deputy medical investigator. So what I do for fun on weekends is pick up dead bodies. We see a certain percentage of, things that happen in the hospital that, basically the doctors say, oops, sorry. And it's not something that they're doing necessarily neglectful. It's just mistakes happen. It's unfortunate. It's sad. It's horrible. We'd like to get rid of every single mistake, but anytime humans are involved in any facet of life, there's going to be mistakes and consequences. And the incident that happened, where you have a person killed, and the Floyd case, was that murder? Yeah, it was. Ask any cop. That wasn't just an oops. It wasn't a result of training. My personal opinion, I don't think it was involved in race. I think it was just idiot cop, and he needs to, at the very least, be taken out of the profession. And in my personal opinion, I think he needs to be prosecuted for it. And I think I haven't found a single cop outside there that disagrees with that. Could it have been prevented if somebody had never hired him? Absolutely. If a background check had been done, absolutely. I personally don't think that you can train racism out of people, that you have to identify that and prevent them from being in the profession first. And that's how you get rid of it. But I think being able to have discussions like this, being able to talk honestly without the fear of offending, without the fear of argument or anger or emotion, and just being able to put our minds together and figure out the best solution will get us as close to that 100% as we can.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that, Frank. What I'm hearing a lot of is, it sounds like, just kind of from what Holly shared and what Frank shared, it sounds like, there's, things put in place so that we can try to, find the biases before the officers do become, sworn in. It sounds like, the trainings and everything is very rigorous. And so I do appreciate you guys, sharing a little bit of what you do and kind of what you go through and how you did get involved, in the profession. I did see that Avendi did have a question. Did you still want to speak, Avendi? Okay.
Yes. This kind of goes back to what Holly was discussing a few minutes ago when she asked if we had any further questions. And I had a question because I may not be fully aware, but I have heard that the highest education to become a police officer is you just need a high school diploma. And I don't know if that is correct, if I'm being misled. But I wondered if a possible thing that we could implement is requiring a college diploma, and possibly in psychology, so that there can be better de-escalation training, because psychology is a very important thing that I believe goes into police work and in almost any job, truthfully. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
There is a minimum of a high school diploma. I do believe, and it kind of goes back and forth, they trade experience for education. But I think recently, I would have to look it up to be for sure, because it gets changed around a lot. I think there is some requirement of college right now. I think that's interchangeable for some military experience and some other on-the-job kind of experience. But I mean, it would be wonderful if everybody could have a college degree before they got into law enforcement. But the reality of having applicants that are available and interested, there's not a whole lot of people that want to be police officers to begin with. There's not, I mean, we get enough recruits and interest to fill academy classes, but once you start upping a lot of some of those specific requirements, you take out a lot of individuals that would make good officers from that pool of people. I didn't have a college education. I had some classes when I started, just being myself for an example. I had a few criminal justice classes that I had completed by the time I put in for law enforcement, but I didn't have a degree. I completed my degree during my career as law enforcement, but I would say that most individuals, they're encouraged when you get into the department. You get a lot of training throughout the department. A lot of those things that you're talking about for psychology, a lot of that comes from our crisis intervention team. They do a lot of understanding person's mental health and situation. So, and that's a lot of that training is specific to what we deal with on a daily basis. When you go to college courses, now that I've completed those, it's more general psychology, which is definitely helpful. But I think the training education that we get through law enforcement specifically applies to the situations that we encounter. So if we could, and that's what our academies are based towards also. So you get kind of, you know, this college education setting in the academy, because you get some physical, you get a lot of education on how to deal with the public and those types of topics specifically. Some of them include psychology. It goes through the statutes, so you get your law blocks, you get your psychology blocks, you even get some Spanish blocks because of our surrounding areas. They try to teach how to say some minor things, you know, communication wise for other languages. They really try to go through a little bit of everything through the academy. So it's kind of like a mini college course, to put it that way. But the higher the standards that we put, if we put a degree as mandatory, you're really gonna take away from your pool of people that would be willing and able to participate. And I think you're gonna cut out a lot of really good applicants that you can get trained up and be able to be a part of it. But then we do get a lot of college students who have completed their degrees. They've had that opportunity to do that. And we're happy to take them and their experiences also. So it's kind of a good way to keep a diverse department by allowing people of different experiences in their lives to be able to apply. We're an equal opportunity employer. So if you pass and you qualify, you're eligible to be hired.
Perfect. Thank you, Holly. Frank?
Frank.
Thanks. I want to kind of piggyback off that. With us, it's the same thing. We hire pretty much lateral officers, but I have meetings all the time with individuals because I take the time from anybody that wants to call me and say, hey, I want to be a cop when I grow up. I say, I want to be a cop when I grow up too. But the biggest thing is, what I tell them is go to college, at some point, get a degree in something other than cop stuff. Do not get a cop degree in college. I tell them very bluntly, get a degree that you can do from wheelchair, because believe it or not, the chances of law enforcement people going home are a lot less than the general public. And I tell them the best thing you can do for you and your family is to get a degree that you can do from a wheelchair, because the real possibility is that you're not going to go home, or you're going to get hurt to the point of not being able to be a cop anymore. And it's just reality. And it helps them. Does it really help in the cop world? I haven't found a real strong use for it in what I do, because like Holly said, we get trained in very specific areas very well. And we're talking literally thousands of hours to specialize. Before I was promoted to lieutenant, I did homicides. It's a very specific training you have to go through, interview and interrogation, crime scene processing. Now you're getting into the forensic ends of it. You have to know this stuff before you can start knowing what to look for. So when you join a department, and they will train you how to be a cop and how to be a really good cop if it's a good department. So get a degree in something that you can do if, God forbid you get hurt, or you decide, I've found that usually after 2 years, a person gets in and they're either a cop for the rest of their lives, or they're out and don't ever want to come back. So you don't want to take that criminal justice degree necessarily to become a cop and then realize that's not what you want to do for your life. Get a degree in something else that you love, and use that as a backup, and then give our profession a try.
Well, thank you guys for sharing. I really hope that helped answer a few of your questions. Does anybody else have any questions? Kyle, I know that you've been part of this whole time. Do you have any questions for anyone at this point?
No, I don't at this point. I've just kind of been listening and really appreciate everyone sharing their opinions and asking the different questions. Definitely feel like I've learned a lot.
Well, thank you, Kyle. And oh, sorry, Heidi.
No, that's okay. I'm just jumping in real quick. I saw that Suha joined us and she's had her hand raised. So maybe you could introduce yourself and say where you're from and then maybe ask your question.
Yeah, sure. Sorry I wasn't here earlier. I was in another meeting. But I'm Suha. I'm a second-year student here at UNM, and I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota. Is there anything else I need for the introduction? No? Awesome. And so my question is really just, is there anywhere that like students or faculty or anyone can find like published records, like complaint records that may have been filed against any UNM PD officers or anyone that comes to work for our department? Because I think one of the biggest issues I've seen is people simply don't know who's meant to be protecting us on campus. And so a lot of people are left clueless really to like what the backgrounds of the officers on our campus may be like. And I'm an RA on campus and I work for the Black living community, and I know that I've had a lot of my residents come to me and tell me that they have like personally been like watched by officers until they get like into the building because they've like are thought to be suspicious or something like that. So I just was wondering if there are published complaint records anywhere, and if not, if there could be in the future to kind of open up more transparency between the student body and those who are meant to be protecting us.
Perfect, Suha. Thank you so much for sharing. I really do appreciate your question there. What I do, it's kind of sounds like, we're ready to maybe start doing the kind of brainstorming kind of based on, the questions that we've had about like what is happening with the training and all of those types of things. So, kind of bringing it back to, kind of what Suha just kind of said, and then what Reagan had originally asked too. So what can we do at this point, or what are you guys wanting to see as far as communication and connecting with students in the future, and then how we can get this communication going a little better so that we all do have a better understanding of kind of why UNM PD is there, who's there at UNM PD, and so I don't know, Detective Young, if you kind of wanted to, did you have any ideas, since I know that you did, that was one of your main goals. Did you kind of have any ideas right off the bat?
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that we just implemented over the last year is the Campus Safety Council, which helps the officers because not everything is a police fix. A safety concern may be something dealing with the environment or mental health issues or anything like that. So the Campus Safety Council is a group that is, we bring all those groups together and we problem solve on a bigger level. How can we fix these issues at UNM so the police aren't going to this one call day after day after day, and we're using our resources, we're using our officers for something that can be fixed in a different way. Whether it's a traffic area, changing the road, changing the signage, changing, whatever needs to be done on a UNM level can be done. And then our officers are better used in other ways. So we have to look at how we use our resources. But the communication part, we want people to come to us when they need us. And if people aren't feeling comfortable coming to us, then there's a problem, and we do need to find out what we can do. At this point, the Division of Equity and Inclusion has become a real asset to our community, and they're helping come up with ideas on how to do things like that, how to bring communication to different groups. And we're meeting with the ethnic centers. We're going to try to problem solve within just the ethnic centers and the diversity of equity and inclusion to find out specifically what they feel the officers might need to know, or what kind of training they might need. And we're going to kind of go back and forth until we find something that works. So that's what we've come up with, but we welcome any ideas, because just going out to events doesn't always work. You know, I mean, if the police have an event, an open house or something, and people come in and they ask questions, you're just going to get a few people trickling in. We want to reach a lot more people. So how do we do that? You know, any way that would be helpful, any ideas, we welcome those.
Thank you, Detective Young. We really, really appreciate that. So I guess she's reaching out to the students. Are there any ideas that you guys could come up with that would help this situation, or that would, you know, bridge the connection in between the students and the UNM PD or the APD?
I'll dime in on that one real quick. There was a very good question that came out the last meeting I was in a couple of days ago, and I think it came from Emma. And one of her suggestions or questions was, how do we get groups to meet officers when they're hired or so forth, or something to that effect? I know that when we hire an officer, one of the things they do for the first week is obviously they go through their orientation and they have to take certain tests, do things just to be a UNM employee. And Ryan could dime in on this, but we'll have that officer meet with Greek life at their request. So if you're part of a group and you want to meet this new officer and you want to, you know, I guess, reiterate your concerns or your culture or what have you, by all means, make that suggestion. And we'll be more than happy to have that or implement into our hiring process, that from now on, you'll have to meet with this particular group. Does that make sense? So I know we've done it for the athletics department. We send officers over there to meet and greet the new athletes. And so by all means, we'll be more than happy to do that. All you have to do is just simply contact one of us. And again, we have our own website, and we'll get it to the right person, and we'll get that out there, and we'll try to start something like that. And I think that's a great idea, a great plan, because it seems to work. I mean, when I first came out here, I had no clue. I came from APD. It was completely different. When I came here, it's like the amount of diversity of people that I dealt with was unbelievable. And because there's a mixture of everybody here at university from all over the world, compared when I was out there dealing with people out there in the streets, out there with APD. So when I got here and when I was introduced to Greek life and everything like that, it really helped. It helped me understand. And it also helped me to understand that the majority of our officers, we're a little older, okay? I have 4 daughters, the oldest one being 31 years old. And I got 2 girls in college now, but they elected to go to Arizona. And my last one is a 15-year-old sophomore in high school. So I could assure you that our officers, we look at the students here as almost as our own. I know it sounds funny, but that's how we truly feel. Again, like I said, I got 4 daughters, and I can see this panel, majority they're all women. And and it's like, so we take your safety, your concerns very serious. And I will personally do what I can to help you to bridge that gap. You just have to simply let us know and contact us, and we'll set something out. Even off, site, we'll set something for you.
I can just clarify what Lieutenant Bitsoy was talking about. So The Student Activity Center, we've been really fortunate to have a relationship with UNM Police that, gosh, I think this has been going on for 15, maybe 20 years. Anytime a new police officer is hired, we get a half an hour period with them, and we run over things like fraternity and sororities, outdoor events, campus events, to give them a heads up on what's coming their way. For people that are not involved in fraternity and sorority life, they really don't understand kind of the culture behind fraternities and sororities, the leadership structure, some of the events that they're doing, terminology based within the Greek community. And so we run through a lot of those things to educate police officers on some of the things they might experience, because part of their patrol area is the Sigma Chi and Mesa Vista roads, which have fraternity and sorority properties on campus. So there can be some regular dealings with fraternities and sororities in those areas. But a good thing that it does for us and our staff is it allows us to get to know those police officers so they can put names to faces. So anytime they see us at an event around campus, whether it's a free speech event, some of the preachers coming to campus, if it's fiestas and they're providing security at fiestas, they know who we are, we know who they are. It's just kind of establishes a little bit of a relationship for us and those new police officers to kind of get us off on the right foot, to educate them a little bit more about some of the programs that we work in. So we feel like it's been very valuable for us and our students that we work with in those communities to work with those police officers that way.
Perfect. Just kind of hearing from what, Larry shared with us, and then what Ryan just shared, it sounds like, how you shared that, you guys do like meet and greets, and it sounds like, based on what Ryan said, it sounds like there's a lot of connection with the Soros and the frats. And so, based on what they said, Larry's suggestions about maybe, how do you guys feel about contacting, UNM PD? And then what are you guys feeling about, the suggestion of maybe extending through the hiring process of meet and greeting more organizations than just kind of like frats and soros and athletics? What do you guys feel on that? Kyle, I did see you had your hand up.
Yeah, just talking about reaching out to UNM PD and being able to contact them. I know that's something that athletics, and more specifically the football team, has had a wonderful opportunity with lately and had some really good experiences. I know Detective Young came over and we were able to have a more in-depth conversation than like a meet and greet in kind of a smaller group. And then we had some different officers come to an athletic event we had, the big chalking event we did over by the pit. And so I know, like, through our experience, being able to reach out and contact them and invite them to come kind of be a part of our activities and different things, I think has been a big bonus for us. And like they said, being able to put names to faces, same for us, being able to better understand who these people are on campus and that they really are on our side of things and are here to support us and keep us safe. So I know it's been really positive for us the more that we've reached out and actually been able to build more in-depth relationships than just maybe come and speak to a team or speak in an event kind of a thing.
Well, thank you, Kyle. It was really good to hear from you. Oh, Detective Young, you had your hand raised. If you want to go, Heidi.
No, I just saw that Suha has had her hand up for a little bit, so maybe we get to her first, and then, sorry, Detective Young, get you next.
Of course. I was actually gonna ask Suha a question, so you go ahead and share, Suha. That would be great.
Yeah, sure. So just like on the topic of ideas on how to better relationships and whatnot, I know that over the summer I talked to Dean of Students Nasha Torres, and we discussed the possibility of a subcommittee on the safety on the campus safety council that was made up entirely of students, and then sent one student representative to the actual campus council to sit and represent that body. And I thought it'd be a cool idea to get students from all over campus. I think maybe max 10 students probably would be the best way to go about it, because meetings bigger than that can be hard to facilitate. But I think that'd be a good way to get students to feel like they have a voice in who's meant to be protecting them on campus, and feel more aware of the safety precautions that are needed on campus. And I guess I had another question as well, more directed towards like the logistics of hiring, but would it be possible to add, I don't really know who does the hiring currently, but would it be possible to add it to like a panel and include folks from the ethnic centers or the Department of Diversity and Inclusion to those like panels of hiring to help with the like sides that we may not be able to see directly like in interviews or anything like that, but yeah.
Yeah, that could be a possibility. We'll bring that up. But the idea about the Campus Safety Council and having a committee of just students, I think that's awesome. That would really benefit us as a safety committee or a council. So yeah, I think Nasha and I actually co-chair that committee, the Campus Safety Council. So yeah, we would welcome anything like that.
Well, thank you so much. It seems like you guys are making those connections. I know that Emma, did you have your hand raised a second ago as well? Would you like to ask your question now?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think it's great that there are different avenues for like UNM police to talk to different groups on campus. However, I don't think that that is necessarily like a great representation of like our campus community. Like I'm a member of Greek Life, but I am like very willing to recognize that that is not a great representation of just our campus as a whole, and same with like UNM athletics. It's a very small majority of students on campus, and so I definitely think that it would be great that not just these groups on campus are reaching out to UNM PD, but I think it's important that UNM PD is making the effort to reach out to the different on-campus communities, whether that be resource and ethnic centers or like resident life, because obviously they're the people that are on our campus at night that should definitely be a part of those conversations. And so I just wanted to say that I agree that students should definitely be reaching out if they feel comfortable, but I think it also needs to come from UNM police to show that they are willing to hear students out. So
I'd like to just throw something your way. We're looking at through the Campus Safety website, putting a forum out that people can request officers come speak to them in different areas, like if they just want general safety, or if they want sexual misconduct and response talks, you know, any kind of safety talks that they would want to request. And then that would be a different avenue for people to be able to reach out to police on bringing police to their group. Another thing, since the COVID, we've been doing a lot of stuff virtually and having a coffee with a cop virtually for different groups. I think maybe that, because that would be something where it's not intimidating. We can have a bunch of cops come out on Zoom and just talk with people about maybe if they're interested in becoming a police officer, what that looks like, you know, whatever they are interested in talking about, and getting to know those officers and asking questions. So there are a lot of different things we can do. It's got to be a lot of different things. We've got to reach out in different ways. We can't just do the same thing over and over. We have to try different things, and if they don't work, then try something else. But we're constantly looking for new ways to do that.
thank you. And I did want to just reiterate that I also agree about the Campus Safety Council and having a student committee. Like I am a student representative on that committee right now, but I definitely don't feel that there are enough students on there. So I think that that would be great, adding a student committee to come to Campus Safety Council to address their concerns. I think that would be great. So thank you.
I'm wondering from the students, what do you think? And especially Emma, because you talked about, you know, I really love that you brought up the residence life, because they're not, I think, often represented, because we know we did specific people for this group. But what would you guys say, what would reach other students? Like, what could the police do that would get other students, even the average student, to know about them or get them involved or even just to get the word out. Because I think that that's one of the bigger things that we're not sure, you know, we're wanting to do, but, or not we, but the police are wanting to do. But yeah, that was my curious question for all of you students. What do you think would be a good way to try and reach out?
I think
I
Suha
stumped you.
I think Suha has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Suha.
Yeah, I think, like I'd mentioned earlier, I'm an RA on campus, and something that I think was kind of left out of our training this summer was like the opportunity to meet with UNM PD, because in almost every incident that escalates, we're told to contact UNM PD, but like a lot of us went in and like, especially following the summer, I'll be honest, most of us did not have like positive opinions of police departments, much less knowing that we had to rely on them if things escalated. So I think like making the effort to come to like our trainings or reaching out to like the higher ups within the department to see if there's a time they can come in and do a 2-hour like block on when to contact UNM PD, how to reach us, and all that kind of stuff. I think in terms of reaching other student groups, like I think sometimes in order to reach students, you kind of have to think like a student org and like be tabling, be spending time like actively like looking for conversations, even if it's just like setting up a table once a week outside of LAPO and like doing a fun raffle or doing something like that, like allowing students the opportunity to see you all as like people instead of just like within your professional capacity, because I think that's where the biggest gap exists right now. And making sure that those efforts, like Emma had mentioned, are coming from both sides so that it doesn't feel like it's entirely a one-sided effort for departments seeking your presence at different events or conferences.
Just real quick, if Detective Young, if you could put your information in the chat, your email and your phone number for me, it'll be available. So those are great ideas. Simply contact her because she's implemented a lot of this, I guess, communication, dialogue, what have you. I mean, we actually got a Facebook account, Twitter. She's thinking outside the box, okay? And so she's going way and beyond what's necessary in order to make this work. So she'll put her information up in the chat, look it up. If you got great suggestions or advice or anything like that, simply get a hold of her. And because I'm open to a lot of that. We're all open to a lot of that. We're more than willing. I send officers and detectives to training, but I only send them if they're requested. And it'll be any type of training. If you just simply want to know about us, what we do on a daily basis, we'll do that. We've done safety trainings. We've done training when it comes to actor, shooter type things like that. I mean, you name it. We're open. We're out there for you, and we'll be more than happy to come out and answer any questions for you.
Thank you so much. I just want to remind everybody about the time. We're at 11:54 right now, so we have about 6 minutes left of the meeting. So I'd really like to hone in on any questions any students or any officers have left. I really like the connections that we're making. Thank you, Detective Young, for leaving your information in the chat. So if anybody has any questions, let's get them out in the open.
I think Emma had her hand raised.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to add one more like suggestion. I think also reaching out to the resource and ethnic centers as well as different parts on campus. So like not forgetting about like North Campus and just like the different areas across campus that students normally go to, because like I know that we have a lot of commuter students on campus that may not necessarily be involved in different places. So I think echoing what Suha said and just trying to get on different places on campus. But yeah, I do want to recognize that like I've had a lot of communications with like Tish Young, and like I've seen like a lot of like new implementations like the Campus Safety Council. So I think that is a great start, but I don't think like I don't know. Let me backtrack, but I definitely think there's still a lot of progress to be made. So I definitely recognize all that you're doing, but I'm excited to see like more with having students involved on like the different committees and different places in campus to help contribute to the changes that can be made. So.
Very nice, Emma. I just wanted to jump in and say, you know, I think it's so important that we've been able to have this conversation today, and it is a good start, and I think there's a lot of good ideas. I know Destiny put in that we have been taking notes from today, so we'll kind of compile that and we'll put it on and email it out to all of you, and if you want copies of this recording so you can share them maybe with your departments or your groups, we are happy to do that. And we also want to put out there that, you know, as a class, because I teach conflict management, and our goal in conflict management is really to get people to have a conversation, a good, productive conversation like we had today. And our group is also very happy to help facilitate any future conversations for any group out there, or, you know, to jump in and just to help you guys organize anything if you were interested in that. But hopefully you'll still, with or without us, you'll still continue to have some good ongoing conversations. So thank you, everybody. And I will give it back to Chelsea or Destiny. You want to wrap it up?
I just really want to say that I appreciate this opportunity that each one of you have given us. We have all learned something and taken into account for something, and I think we've all looked at something in a different perspective. And that's what we were all here for today, is to make those connections and to educate ourselves. So I appreciate each one of you. Destiny, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, you know, it sounds like we are at a good start here. We already do have some suggestions. It seems like, you know, Tish and just everyone at UNM PD, and also Holly and Frank are very open to suggestions. So I think, you know, moving forward, it will be definitely very important to keep these kinds of conversations going on and to definitely try to implement some of the suggestions that we've heard today. So yes, thanks again, you know, for all of you being here and giving us this opportunity.